George Washington, America's first president. This text was sent home with my packet number 5, and I'm here to read it aloud to you. George Washington was America's first president, and he's certainly a famous American. So if you look at the cover below the image, you can see that the author's name is Justin McRory Martin, illustrated by Bert Dodson. Let's go over to page 1. On my screen, you can see the page numbers in the blue circle at the bottom. Page 1 has an image of George Washington, an illustration, and right here, this orange star, this would be the caption. Remember, a caption is a text that explains the image. I'll start with the caption. George Washington was the President of the United States from 1789 to 1797. George Washington is often called the father of our country. He was the first President of the United States of America. Keep reading to learn about this important leader. Page 2. George was born on a farm in Virginia in 1732. Virginia was one of the 13 colonies ruled by England at that time. America was not even a country yet. Look to the caption that has the purple background. It says, Young George loved to ride horses. Page 3. Young George rode his horse to school. He was good at math. He was not as good at spelling. Look to the caption at the top of the page. This is a rule George copied from a book of manners. Page 4. When George was 16 years old, he left home to find work. Some people thought he was a grown-up because he was so tall. George got a job measuring land and making maps. And the caption on this page, George used special tools to measure the land. Page 5. George's dream was to become a soldier. When he was 20, he joined the Virginia Army. George was very brave. Soon he was put in charge of many other soldiers. George also dreamed of having a family. He married a woman named Martha Custis. George left the army and became a farmer, but soon he had to return to the army. And the caption on this page, Martha had 2 children from her first marriage. Their names were Jackie and Patsy. Over to the next page. At that time, a war was starting because the colonies did not like England's rules. The colonies formed an army. George was chosen to lead it. So remember, everybody, when people first lived in the United States, it was known as the 13 colonies, and England was in charge of the 13 colonies. Well, the people who lived there didn't like that very much. And in this illustration, it says these were some of England's rules for the colonies. So the colonies didn't like these rules. The colonies had to give money, called taxes, to England. The colonies had to give English soldiers food and shelter. The colonies could not trade freely with other countries. So those were some of the things that people living in the 13 colonies didn't like. Let's go to the next page. Page 8. George's army had problems. There were not enough uniforms and tents. The soldiers were not trained. Many of them were farmers. How could America win the war? And look up to the caption on this page with the green background. The war between England and the colonies was called the Revolutionary War. Page 9. George was a great leader. He trained his soldiers. He inspired them too. George ordered that the Declaration of Independence be read to the army. The soldiers all cheered. Let's look to the caption on this page with the blue background. The Declaration of Independence was written in 1776. It said that the colonies were free from England. So the Declaration of Independence was like a piece of paper with some writing on it. You can see that in the illustration. And what it said was that the colonies were free from England. So this was something that really inspired the army. Next page. The war lasted 8 long years. There were many battles, but the colonies did not give up. The English finally asked for peace. George's army had won the war. The caption on this page says, "The English soldiers played a sad song as they gave up." Next page. The colonies became their own country, the United States of America. The new country needed a leader. George was a hero, so he was elected to be the first president. Let's look to the image on this page. I'll read the caption first with the orange background. George became president on April 30th, 1789. This shows what he wore that day. So what we have here is kind of a diagram where we have an image and parts of the image are labeled. George had powdered hair, a brown suit, white silk stockings, and shoes with silver buckles. Well, we know this was a long time ago, over 200 years ago, so people certainly dressed differently back then. Let's go to the next page. Being president was a very hard job. There was a lot of work to be done. George traveled to different states. He learned about problems and tried to solve them. And the caption on this page says, George signed many laws to help Americans. Next page. George could not run the country all by himself. He chose people to help him, such as Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. And the illustration on this page shows those three men, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and Thomas Jefferson. The caption tells us Thomas Jefferson later became the third president of the United States. Next page, page 14. George was elected president 2 times. People even wanted him for a third time, but George thought the country needed a new president. Finally, he returned to his home in Virginia. And the caption with the green background, after he was president, George returned to his farm. Page 15. Today there are many places named after George Washington. His face is also on the $1 bill and the quarter. America will always remember George Washington as a brave leader. And the caption on this page reads, "The Washington Monument is in America's capital city, Washington, D.C. The city is also named after George Washington." Page 16, we have our glossary. Colony, noun, land controlled by another country. Elected, verb, chosen for a political job by voting. Inspired, verb, encouraged to do something. Manners, noun, polite behavior.